Konnichiwa. Welcome to Ralph Reads, brought to you by TURN, the United Ronin Networks. My name is Ralph Anthony Garcia, also known as R4. The legal, the loyal, the regal, the royal, Ronin Ralph, your master of ceremonies. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tune in to TURN, the United Ronin Networks. We are Ronin. Today on Ralph Reads, we travel mile after mile with a smile. Brought to you by Midnight and the Meaning of Love. Written by New York City's own Sister Souljah. This is Book 2, Volume 4. 3 episodes in this trip, and there's still more. And of course, that's for sure. I don't expect any less. Let the reading commence. Chapter 7.
This is so much better than pizza, piano, and practices,
Chiasa stated with her excited softness. She sat down on the bench in Yoyogi Park beside me, holding my camera like a baby. Deep in thought, I didn't speak right away.
Let's go to my house. You have to see this,
she said, standing up again.
Besides, I have to keep myself occupied to keep my mind off our fast.
That's the opposite of the Muslim mindset, I thought to myself. We want to keep our mind on the fast, its meaning, its reasons, and on making our prayers. Although I had been steadfast in not taking food and water from sunrise to sunset, I knew I was wrong for not being focused on Ramadan. My mind was jam-packed with winning back my wife. Chiasa removed her shoes at her front steps.
You can leave your sneakers here,
she said.
No one will steal them, and I have some slippers for your feet.
I paused at the bottom of the 3 cement steps leading to her front door.
His bicycle is there. Grandfather is home. You can come in, she
said happily. On the inside of the door was a shelf with racks of house slippers wrapped in plastic. Chiasa opened a pair and bent down to place them on my feet. Thank you, I got it, I told her, sliding each foot in one.
Okay.
She smiled halfway, slid into her slippers, and shouted,
Tadaima!
We both entered her living room. An ebony grand piano absorbed most of the space in her humble house. It glistened as though it had just been polished moments ago and appeared to be more expensive than everything else they had, combined furniture, floor mats, and decorations. Konnichiwa, Onji-chan, I said afterward, recalling from my study cards that I just called him grandfather as though he were my own and not by his proper name. He spoke. Konnichiwa.
Grandfather welcomes you,
Chiasa summed up his words. Arigato goshimashita, I thanked him. Chiasa said some words to her grandfather, then toward me, saying,
Drop that here,
referring to my luggage. I laid my duffel down and my Jansport. I was both hesitant and anxious. I felt inadequate about entering a home for the first time empty-handed. I was a newcomer and should present a gift. I felt at the same time anxious to talk with Chiasa and get on my way to Kyoto. Chotomate, I said. I bent on one knee to open my bag. I dug in and pulled out one of the gifts that Uma had prepared.
For anyone who is good to my son.
I opened it and pulled out the sterling silver case of Uma's homemade cigarettes. I approached him, holding the case with both hands on either side, presenting it. I said, Koriwa present o Oji-chan no tamani. Grandfather, here's a gift for you. Both he and Chiasa smiled with great purpose. Chiasa clapped for me. Her grandfather stood up, all smiles himself, thanking me. I looked beyond the smiles, feeling that I had done the right thing, but wondering if on the inside they thought my beginner's use of the Japanese language confirmed that all foreigners are fools to be tolerated as tourists only for a short period of time. I eased up the steps, uncomfortable at being invited and allowed to enter a young single female's bedroom, and also under the watch of her grandfather. His eyes followed me up, but once I reached the top, there was no way for him to survey me any further. The second floor was sealed off, but what appeared to be a paper wall. I looked up and saw that it had thick metal borders which lined the top, sides, and bottom. Chiasa placed 3 fingers in the slot and slid the wall all the way from left to right. Her amazing room had been revealed. She entered first, moving past a 4-foot-tall textured globe. She used one hand to set it off spinning.
I know the name of every country on every continent and even most of the major islands,
she said. I didn't comment. I thought it meant that she had a sharp mind and unusual discipline, but must have also been lonely to dive into such study.
I wanted to know for certain where in the world my father was and exactly how much distance there was between us,
she told me as she set up the television, VCR, and camera.
You have to see this.
She pressed rewind. Her bed was a thin and narrow mattress laid in the furthest corner of a room on the floor, topped off by a peculiar pillow. It didn't seem like she could sleep comfortably.
So beautiful. Who's this?
Chiasa interrupted my thoughts. Uma's face was paused on her television screen.
She looks like a film star,
Chiasa remarked. Umi, my mother, I answered, using the Arabic word for mother rather than Uma, which is my mother's name.
Uncle? Really?
Chiasa exclaimed and touched the screen with 2 fingers as though she were touching Uma's skin. Chiasa seemed to be on pause like the picture. She then bowed down to my Uma as though she were here in the room with us. As Chiasa stood up, she pressed fast forward.
Here it is!
She pressed stop, then play. My mind dumped every other thought and focused. The screen was bursting with hundreds of people, or perhaps thousands, mostly Japanese, mostly young, but all types streaming in between them. I could see the unimpressive Hachiko statue off in the not-too-far distance. People crowded around it together, yet it seemed as though each of them were there alone, just in the same space. Although standing near the statue were groups of people talking to each other, waiting for each other, or looking for one's missing. Chiasa caught one mother's panic expression and mission as she searched for someone, probably her child. I could see that Chiasa trailed her with the lens around the area of the Hachiko. From the film, I understood now that Shibuya was an extremely overcrowded space, even more than Shinjuku Station. But what else?
There he is. Now watch him,
she said a moment later. It was easy to notice him because she had captured him in the lens and zoomed in. He was a well-dressed Japanese man with a concentrated stare and pronounced jawline. He stood still in the swelling, swarming crowd and looked hard, moving his head and eyes in tiny measures.
So while I was looking for the 100,000 yen shoe girl, I found him,
Chiasa said. The man's shoes were quite expensive and complemented his suit. About 45 seconds of shooting him from every angle, the camera followed him a few feet only where an African man was standing alone. The Japanese man spoke to him, but his words were inaudible in the rowdy crowd. He placed a hand on the African guy's shoulder. The African guy turned around and talked to him for about 3 seconds. The Japanese guy returned to his original spot. He searched around again. He moved in the opposite direction to the other side of Hachiko and approached another dark-skinned man. The same thing happened. By the 5th try, the young black guy he approached was standing with some friends. He began barking on the Japanese guy, and then 3 more suited men appeared from the crowd to the Japanese guy's rescue.
Keep watching now. Check out their headsets.
Chiasa pointed out that all 3 of the newly arrived Japanese men were wearing them. They were the kind that sit in and around one ear only instead of being strapped to both sides. She zoomed in on the 4 of them, and the lens scanned them from head to toe. The argument with the African teens broke up immediately after the 3 extra well-suited guys appeared. Then there was a break in the images, and all I could see were upside-down hordes of people.
Keep watching,
Chiasa said. The lens picked back up on the original suited guy leaving Hachiko at 3 p.m. sharp. Chiasa obviously followed him to the corner through tens and hundreds of people to the curb. A Crown Vic rolled up at 3:06. The 3 extra guys were inside, one of them driving, 2 in the back. The original guy leaned in and talked to them and then walked away. The camera followed him.
There he is!
Chiasa jumped up from her chair and pressed pause. On the screen was the Japanese Bentley, the back right window lowered halfway.
That's Naoko Nakamura! That's him!
She said in a muted but excited tone. She pressed play again. On the screen now was the original suited man. He raised his right hand, shielding his image from Chiasa's lens. Then she dropped the camera to her side, and all I could decipher was Chiasa's voice saying,
Sumimasen. Sumimasen. Sumimasen.
Before the picture went cold, the camera was off. We sat quietly.
I can help you,
she said.
You came back alone, so I could see that you do need some help. I've been paying attention the whole time. It's not Iwa, it's Akemi. Last night, I was at the wrong house, but that's only because you didn't trust me. It's Naoko Nakamura giving you a difficult time. He sent the note to the Shinjuku hostel. He pretended to be Akemi. His men showed up at Hachiko and intended to snatch you, or at least throw you in the car or have you picked up by police. If you weren't so smart, they would have gotten you.
She thought some more and added,
But probably not the police. Falling in love with a girl is not a crime, even if her father and friends don't agree.
She paused again.
As long as she loves you too, and why wouldn't she?
Chiasa's voice trailed off to a low murmur. From my front pocket, I pulled out my wife's address and phone number in Kyoto. That's my next move, I thought to myself. Chiasa, I need you to take care of 2 things for me. First, I need you to call Akemi's house and ask to speak with Akemi. When she gets on, in Japanese, tell her that you are a friend of Mayonaka's. Mayonaka says not to worry. I'll arrive in Kyoto tonight. Keep your bags packed. Mayonaka will pay for everything you need. I promise I won't take too long.
That's it?
Chiasa double-checked.
Introduce myself as a friend now, not the translator?
That's it, I confirmed.
Alright, let me give myself a name,
she said, straightening herself in the chair as though Akemi or whomever answered the phone could see her and pass judgment.
Okay, I'm Aya. That's the name I'll use. And if she's not home, then what?
Chiasa asked.
Should I leave any kind of message?
Just excuse yourself. Don't leave any information. Say you'll call her back later, I told her.
And if she picks up and asks for you?
Chiasa questioned. I liked that she was so precise. After you tell her what I said, I'll get on and confirm, I instructed her.
Okay, give me the number,
she said. I slid it across her desk. Chiasa was sitting still, holding the phone number in her hand. Quickly, I pulled out my study cards and began flipping through them for the Japanese words to express myself over the phone. Maybe Chiasa wanted to memorize it, I thought. She laid the paper down and said the same thing she said when I first met her a few days ago.
My Aunt Tasha said people who don't trust people end up trusting the wrong people. Who gave you this information?
She asked me. What's up? I asked her.
This is not an address or a phone number. Whoever gave you this misled you.
What does it say?
It's not cool,
she said. Just tell me, I told her. Then she began to read it to me.
Sorry, I cannot give you Akemi-san's telephone number and address. She wants you to know it. She will believe that you have it, but I already done too much. I feel great shame. Go home. It is better that you leave Akemi alone so that she can forget. You don't even speak Japanese. True, you are very handsome, but this is not enough.
Her simple words were weighted with insult. Without knowing me, she had decided that I was nothing but a handsome man. She had boiled down my existence to only the mud I was made of, as though I had no purpose, no faith, no heart, no soul, no business, no talent, no culture, and no place in the world, especially here in Japan. I sat back in my chair, ran my hand over my Caesar. I dropped my head down, then lifted it back up. Inside of myself I shouted, "Why is this bullshit going on? Going on? Going on? Going on? Going on? Going on? Going on?" But in my posture, I remained calm. Chiasa had the decency to look away from my agony. Moments later, I understood that I needed prayer to quiet my mind. Not just a recitation of words, but a consultation with Allah. So I excused myself to the men's room, washed my face and nose, hands and feet. When I returned, I was left alone in Chiasa's room. She understood me in this, I thought. In her room, facing the west, the direction of the Kaaba, I made my prayer. Very comforted and soothed, after an amount of time unknown to me, I raised my head from the floor. My eyes and ears readjusted as I turned my head left, then right, and got up from my knees. The humble house, which had been silent before, was filled now with beautiful music. The tones were crisp and clear, and soft and soothing, and sweet and melodious, as though they were seeping and pouring through her paper wall. It was not music that I was accustomed to hearing or that I played in my earphones. It was live piano playing, and it was obvious, even to me, who played no instruments, that it was perfect. She did not interrupt my prayer, and I would not interrupt her piano. I walked around her room seeing Chiasa for the first time, it seemed, even though I had met her days ago and been upstairs in her bedroom for almost 2 hours. And as I saw, her music spoke to me somehow. On my right was a wall of photos. On the left was a warrior's wall of wicked swords, not of the bamboo, but of steel, the kind she wanted to use, the sharp and deadly type, raised up above a bookcase filled with books in both languages. As I surveyed them, I thought her choices were unusual. She wasn't reading manga. It was mostly biographies and autobiographies. I moved toward the right side, pulled in by a poster-sized photo of Chiasa, probably around age 13, in a marigold ballerina tutu, wearing gold-toe shoes. She appeared long and slim. She was balancing herself on one leg and standing perfectly straight on the toes of her left foot. Her other leg was raised and bent. Her toe shoe pointed to the inside of her right knee. Her arms were lifted and locked into a graceful position above her head. Her skin was smooth, but more than all that, the pull of the photo was the way she twisted up her lips and screwed up her face at what had to happen less than a second before the photographer snapped the shot. It was as though she wanted the whole world to know that she hated ballet. Her normally powerful, pretty gray eyes were saying,
I don't want to dance, but I'll do it, just to shut you up.
I smiled. Beside the vertical ballerina blow-up was a long rectangular shot of about 180 Japanese people. On first glance, I assumed it was a school photo. On a closer look, it obviously wasn't. There were babies and toddlers and children and teens and mothers and fathers and elders. It was not a casual shot like a family gathered at a reunion or a barbecue. It was more like each of them stiff pose, their clothes crisp and high quality. Someone older resting their hand on someone younger than themselves almost to keep them still and perfect also. It was outdoors with nature as the backdrop. I wondered what the event or purpose of their coming together was and why she had it posted on her wall. As I surveyed it more, there was one thing that was different from everything else. It was Chiasa's little black face floating in a sea of others, quote-unquote. Everyone in the picture was Japanese, but only Chiasa's face was sun-kissed. If she had a smile, it wasn't anywhere to be found in this photo. As I looked at the other pictures she had posted, the feeling in her eyes remained the same. Suddenly the piano playing softened as though she had gone from playing all the keys to playing only a few at the far end of the keyboard. And then just 3 keys and 2 keys and then only 1. I overheard her speaking in her language. Then a man's voice began speaking in Japanese, different from the voice of her grandfather. Then her grandfather and she thanked him repeatedly. I pictured her bowing 2 or 3 times, as they seemed to do at hellos and goodbyes and overdue before teachers and elders. Her front door opened and closed, and she rushed up the stairs, excited.
Are you okay?
She asked. Of course, I responded.
Sorry about that. If I don't do my piano lesson, that's the one thing that'll make my mother show up here. So I do it.
I thought her comment was strange and sad.
It's half an hour until sunset. Should I cook? You didn't even eat the breakfast I made for you.
She frowned dramatically. What's this? I asked her, pointing at the rectangular shot.
Family photo,
she answered, turning suddenly serious. What about your father? I asked cautiously, knowing that it was too personal a question, but seriously wondering how she could have a wall plastered with photos from top to bottom, but no trace of the one she talked about openly, affectionately, and constantly. She walked over and stood facing the photo wall. Then she pointed to a patch of Polaroids.
My father sent this to me on my 8th birthday.
It was a picture of the huge globe she had seated in the center of her room.
This was when he went to Germany.
Then she moved her finger and said,
This was for my 9th birthday.
I moved closer in to where she was standing and looked. It was a red Schwinn bicycle. Then she pointed to another.
And this was for my 10th birthday.
It was a karaoke machine with Chiasa standing in front of it holding a microphone.
That's when he was stationed in Saudi Arabia.
As Chiasa showcased her gifts of all types, she said,
My father promised to give me whatever I asked for each year on my birthday. It's like one wish a year that I always look forward to. There is only one thing I'm not allowed to ask for, and he didn't make up that rule until after I asked for it.
She smiled, a melancholy smile. I just looked at her. I knew she would tell me if she wanted to.
1 month before my 12th birthday, I asked if he could come home on my 12th birthday to celebrate with me. I told him that was all I wanted. He was in Afghanistan. He told me that I'm not allowed to ask for that because he is working and that he is helping so many people around the world, so it's selfish to ask him to stop helping them and come see me. Besides, my father says he will always come home to me at some point each year.
Does he?
Yep. I wait, and eventually, when his work is finished, he comes.
She smiled.
So aren't you wondering what gift he gave me on my 12th birthday instead of coming home?
She turned to me, excited. I didn't look back to her Polaroids. Probably that big piano downstairs, I guessed. She frowned.
No, I hate playing the piano. My mother bought that damn thing. Look.
She stepped in front of the picture she had been blocking. It was a beautiful black mare, standing strong. She's beautiful, I said, staring, and I meant it.
I love riding her. She's at the stables in Nagano. I go there on breaks and holidays when I'm not fighting in tournaments.
I imagined her on that horse galloping through the wide open fields at a high speed. As my mind wandered further, I snatched back the image and refocused. She was up to her 16th birthday now.
That's my bike. You saw it today.
She smiled. No, that's your bike, I said, pointing to her 10-year-old gift, the red Schwinn. This is a mean-ass racing machine for pushing the limits, I told her, while again admiring the electric blue color.
My mother hates my motorcycle, but when I ride it, I feel free,
Chiasa said. I knew what I was doing, collecting information on this girl who had become too close and too necessary to my life in 2.5 days. I was forming a more detailed picture of Chiasa. Like usual, I would take a few hours to think and feel, and then I would decide to trust or move on with my solo style. 17 is coming up. What's your wish? I asked her.
I'm still thinking,
She said.
It might be something that is impossible for Daddy to get me, but he'll like that. He loves a challenge, and he'll say nothing is impossible once he decides on it.
She paused for a minute.
My grandfather says you feel like my father.
She said strangely. I look like him? I asked her.
No, you feel like him.
She said softly.
Anyway, he's in the military, not like a low rank. He can't be photographed, so my pictures of him are held in my heart.
Carefully, I listened. Not a low rank, she had said. Of course not, I thought to myself. He had to be some Secret Service type. Probably he pushed himself up from the bottom, though. No, I refigured. His position was so top secret, even Chiasa didn't know the truth. Or maybe she did. I knew for a fact that regular army guys or even other military types take photos. I had seen plenty, especially in the homes of customers I delivered Uma Designs clothing to. But I didn't ask for an explanation concerning her father. How could I, when I wouldn't answer one personal question about my own father, not to anyone other than Uma and maybe Naja or my wife? "Do you plan on working for the military?" I asked her.
Definitely not. I'm gonna have my own company. I'm gonna be a mercenary,
she said solemnly. But I didn't know that word, so I didn't comment. I will look it up tonight.
Sun's down,
Chiasa announced. "Let's drink some water and split a banana. Then we'll go out for dinner," I told her.
Okay, if you want.
She agreed. "Have you ever seen this symbol?" I asked her, drawing the symbol for halal foods on a scrap of paper. She looked at it, curiously, paused, and answered,
No, but I had seen this one.
She drew another symbol. Immediately, I recognized it, same as my ring, the one Sensei had gifted to me. She walked away, opened her desk drawer, and placed the same ring on her finger.
I've seen it on you. Now you see mine on me. It is the symbol of the secret society of ninja-trained warriors,
she said softly. Then she added,
Comrade, please take me seriously.
She bowed her head, but not her body. Ebisa was where we ate dinner, a halal restaurant owned by some African Muslims from Senegal. Haki, the Kenyan who I met in Harajuku, put me up on it. "It depends on what you are looking for in terms of atmosphere," Haki said. "You will find halal foods in Shinokubu, prepared by the Pakistanis, in Shinjuku, prepared by the Indians, in Akikuburu, prepared by the Nigerians or Bangladeshis, or in Ibisir by the Senegalese. Which one do you prefer?" Then he added with a smile, "And I see you are still here. Your one night in Harajuku has turned into two, and this is only the beginning, I am sure," he joked. The Senegalese, I knew, were similar in presentation to the Sudanese, tall, blacker than black, and regal, strong men. A delegation of Senegalese had visited my father's estate once. While I joined and sat solidly watching, I heard them joke of the ways they shared and other ways they differed. One of them boasted that my father was just getting started with a small group of only 3 wives, quote unquote. My father told them that it was his understanding that in Islam, Allah sets limits because it's best for us, quote unquote. He then added, "Yes, I have only 3 wives, but they are the best 3 women in the world, with more purpose and value than 300. My father's words may have made them curious. However, Muslim male style, that delegation would, for certain, never get to lay eyes on my father's wives." Chiasa had unbraided her hair while she waited for me in Harajuku. Now it was long and thick like rope. She shook it with her fingers and wore it wild. After seeing my reaction to her, quote, school uniform, unquote, and then the thin blouse that she tried to wear out to dinner, she knew to dress modestly. She was chilling now in a sky blue linen dress with matching pants and blue leather sandals. She was not my woman, but I believe that when a man stands side by side with a woman, he is responsible for her in that moment. And if anyone offended her, it would be the same as if they attacked me, because she was with me. So I believe that any woman walking in public or traveling any place outside her home puts all the men at risk if she is immodest and nearly naked. I knew from living in America that for me to think this way was unpopular. But my faith and beliefs, as well as my heart, were all homegrown in the soil, tilled and built on my father, his father, and his father's father. We ate at a restaurant called Terenga. The owner, a tall, dark Senegalese wearing natural locks, greeted me with a welcoming West African smile and embrace of brotherhood. He introduced himself as Billy, a ridiculous name, I thought. I knew, however, that many Muslims and people of any and all faiths in foreign lands give themselves ridiculous English names to make it easy for others to pronounce and remember. Besides, I had not told anyone my name. Of course, in the telling of my true name is the name of my father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. So the owner was, quote, Billy, unquote, to me. No problem. The warmth inside and the vibrant music and scent of spices created that feeling that separated Chiasa and me from the fact that we were in Tokyo. In fact, it reminded me that I hadn't heard any real music for 3 days. Now, it was as though we had been transported to Dakar. The walls were all earth tones, and the cooking station formed an aisle, which made 2 sections in the same restaurant. Whatever side you choose, you were unable to see the other. So all the customers gathered to one side, African style. It was as though every customer had arrived at the restaurant in one same group and had known each other for weeks or months or even years. The owner and host, Billy, raised the topics of conversation and invited and stroked and pulled till everyone joined in comfortably like one family. Chiasa was hungry and didn't seem to mind that she was surrounded by about 8 African men. When we arrived, they were speaking in Wolof, the main language of Senegal. It would shift into French at times, but when I ordered our food in English, Billy switched to using English, and then everyone followed. So, my brother, how long have you been in Tokyo? Billy asked me loud enough for all. 3 days, I told them. And already you are losing weight. Welcome to Japan. All the men laughed. We will give you an African man's meal, and when you have finished, no matter where you go in Tokyo, you will be banging on Billy's door, and most of the time, Billy will be here, but sometimes Billy go out, he dramatized in his deep voice, like my southern Sudanese grandfather. They all laughed. I looked around. Take it easy, brother. We're all friends here. All of us are married men, he admitted. But we are all missing our mamas. They laughed some more as the cooking seasonings thickened in the air and brought about a fragrance that could only fill up the belly. I eased some. They were married, and for me, that is a good thing, I figured. I figured out that if I didn't cook food for myself, I couldn't survive Japan. Such stingy and tasteless little meals make a big man angry, he performed, and I saw Chiasa smile. Billy's show continued. So I call Mama. Mama say, come home, son. I cook for you everything. Billy say, Mama, I sent you so much money today for our family. Japan is good for making money, so I stay. Mama say,
my son has to eat good food. I'll send good Senegalese wife to cook for you.
but Billy say no. No, Mama, don't do that. Now everyone is laughing. Billy turns to me and says, Senegalese girl is good girl, but Japanese wife no like. In Senegal, woman knows how to share and behave. In Japan, Billy needs Japanese wife for immigration. He hollered out the word. 2 African male cooks came rushing out from the kitchen, looking startled. Meanwhile, the male waiter came carrying me and Chiesa's meal, still sizzling on one large tray, same way we serve it in Sudan. As the comedy continued, Chiasa and I cleaned our fingers with the steaming hot washcloths we were given. I whispered, over my food and began eating with my right hand from me and Chiesa's one tray, African style. Chiasa looked at my hand and her eyes scanned the other tables. She hesitated. She opened her handbag and pulled out a pair of chopsticks, looked at them, looked around the room, and put them back. Before Billy married Japanese girl, he had a creep around Tokyo like this. Billy raised his more than 6-foot frame on his tiptoes and began tiptoeing across his restaurant. One day back, then I am at apartment with friends. Police come on the block. I said, oh no. All the African men in the restaurant stopped joking, and their laughs turned to murmurs of disapproval. It seemed all around the world African men all felt the same stab and burn when the word police is spoken. Even more whenever cops come around. Billy continued. First come police, then come immigration police. Now I am on the fire escape crouching like a tiger. But Japanese immigration is mean and patient. They wait on the block, search on the block for 6 hours. When they finally leave, my legs are so painful I cannot stand. I cannot walk. I tell my Japanese girlfriend, okay, we get married. Now everyone was laughing again. I didn't know the particular powers of the human mind, but truthfully, my own mind was divided into at least 5 parts. I could hear Billy's performance and see all his dramatic actions. He was in my 5th mind. Meanwhile, I observed Chiasa closely, considering whether or not to bring her all the way into my purpose and mission here in Japan. She was in my 4th mind. Then there was my wife, who sat in the center of my visions and made my heart move and rush and race. She was not a compromise or a convenience. She was not a plaything or an immigration decoy. She was not second to any unmarried woman I know or knew or would ever come to know. Akemi was in my 3rd mind. The method and the fight and how to make it all happen with conflicting information and conflicting interests with a foreign tongue and on foreign land that filled up my 2nd mind. Then there was my Uma, my heart, and my purpose. She's always in my 1st mind. I needed to contact her to be sure that she was at ease and to put her mind at peace. But I was feeling ashamed of a particular Sudanese kind. that I had held Akemi in my arms last night and then let her slip away. But kidnapping and murder are capital crimes. Strategically, I knew, as Sensei had cautioned me, that Akemi needed to leave her father of her own free will, out her own front door, on her own 2 feet, not by climbing a tree, sliding down a black wall, crawling through a thick bush, and leaping into a back alley without any consideration. That would be no good. Billy's booming voice grew extra excited. My 5th mind took over the others and I listened. In Japan, an African man needs 2 passports. One like this. Billy pulled his passport from his back pocket. And the restaurant door opened, causing Billy to pause. It was 2 Japanese girls coming through, all smiles, carrying groceries. Billy seemed surprised, but he pulled them into the drama. And my Japanese wife! He walked over and hugged her. The male customers let out muted laughs and were obviously already familiar with Billy's wife. The 2 Japanese girls bowed to the customers and walked over to the other side of the restaurant and disappeared. Billy continued at half the volume. If you want to be a part of it, you need 2 passports. If you want to own land in Japan, you need 2 passports. If you want to own a business in Japan, you need 2 passports. This one here, he said, holding the passport up for all to see. And that one there, he pointed toward the room where his wife had walked away. I could tell Chiasa had never tasted Senegalese food, but I could also feel that she was enjoying herself. She was reserved, and aside from her light laughter, she did not say one word to any other person in the room. I thought it was a clever position she was in. No one had to know that she was Japanese or that she spoke Japanese unless she wanted them to. She blended in well with the Africans because she was one. She fit in with the Japanese because she was one. It was also interesting how she knew so much about Tokyo, its customs, its streets, its prefectures, and all. But here was a place minutes from her house that she had never seen with her perfect vision. True, there were 3 flights up on a side street in Ebisu in the Tokyo night, but sometimes even when you know a lot about a place, there's still much to learn. Billy was easing into his finale. He asked the African men gathered. My wife here asked me,
Who is more important to you, me or your mother?
So I put the question to you, my brothers. Who is number 1? All the African men stood. All were 6 feet tall or more. All the African men were as black or blacker than me. All masculine and built sturdy and strong. In one chorus, they all shouted, and then the shouts became a chant, and they jumped, and they danced, and then the shouts became a chant, and then they jumped and danced. Mama, 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 mama. Mama, 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 mama. Of course it's mama. When my mama say to me, you are a good boy. You look fresh and clean in your jalabia. You have done a good job, son. I smile like this. Billy's smile spread brightly across his face. No woman, nowhere can top that, Bill said, and they all chanted, Mama, in agreement. The night at Teranga in Ebisu ended with a competitive game of darts. Billy had the waiters push all of the tables on our sides of the wall. As new customers arrived, he had them seated on the opposite side. The dart competition heated up, and each of the 8 African men became deeply serious when they took aim at the bullseye mounted on the far wall. You are winning because you have a good luck charm, Billy said to me while nodding his head toward Chiasa. I don't think that's it, I told him solemnly. Chiasa stepped up to the board, pulled loose 5 darts, and stepped all the way back behind the line drawn on the restaurant floor. Without talking or smiling, she fired each of the 5 darts into the bullseye. Amazed, the men cheered for her. Throughout the night, I saw and heard Billy speak 6 different languages: Wolof, French, English, Japanese, Italian, and German. He was a gracious host, a humorous man, and a Senegalese Bay-Fall Muslim. He loved his mama and handled his business and was not anybody's fool. Although I would never allow my wife to be my passport, I didn't look down on him. Speaking 6 languages and sending his money home to his village was worthy of respect. And the way he flowed in his use of the Japanese language got me hyped. I made myself a promise that night. Hiragana, katakana, 3,000 different kanji, whatever. I will learn to speak Japanese fluently with that kind of ease and dexterity. I paid and left with my quote, lucky charm, end quote. Chiasa, I said.
Hi.
She answered with a smile. Do you believe in God? I asked, to my own surprise.
I believe in right and wrong,
She said softly. Do you believe that you were created? I asked her. She didn't answer, and we continued walking slowly through the streets of Ebisu toward the station. Now look at your fingers, I told her. She looked. Now touch your skin. She lifted her pretty hands to her face and stroked her own cheek. I believe that Allah created all of this, and these beautiful expressions of Allah cannot be duplicated by any man. We walked silently through the crowds and into the station. On a train, we took the 2-seater in the corner situated right by the exit. I'm leaving for Kyoto in the morning, I told her. Both of our eyes were facing forward and not toward one another. You have been helpful to me, and I thank you, for real.
Do you believe in fate?
She suddenly asked.
Like something happened simply because it was supposed to, and nothing that you do could have prevented things from going that way?
It sounds familiar to something that Muslims say. It goes like this. I plan, you plan, we plan, they plan, but Allah is the best of all planners, I shared with her. She smiled and sat back to think on it.
It's funny how life goes, isn't it?
Chiasa asked, speaking to me, but more like she was thinking out loud.
I met you because of my enemy Yuka. I hate that. But I saw you first. I was walking the aisle to get magazines from the flight attendant. You had your sunglasses on indoors. I thought that was funny. When you lifted your hand to adjust them, I saw the ring.
I looked down at the ring Sensei had given to me. I recalled my disappointment with the fact that I had left my gold band, the one symbolizing my marriage to Akemi, on the sink at the Ghazali's. While riding in Mr. Ghazali's taxi to JFK Airport, I wondered if mistakenly leaving my wedding band behind meant anything. I convinced myself, however, that it was a simple mistake, not an omen nor a sign. Walking down through the streets of Harajuku, we reached the point where we could separate. "I'll walk you home," I told her.
You have to come and get your camera and things, unless you just want me to have them.
She smiled. After gathering my few things from her home and saying my farewell to her grandfather, I eased out of the house slippers she had once again provided and back into my Nikes. She followed me outside and offered,
"I'll ride you back on my bicycle."
"So I walked you home. Now you ride me back. Then I'll walk you home again," I asked with a laugh. "Nah, I'm cool," I told her, then left. 2.5 minutes into my walk back into the hostel, I stopped in the middle of the Harajuku madness, stood beside some Japanese dude dressed like a pirate and 2 others like elves, and asked myself, what are you doing? You have 3 days to find your wife before Nakamura leaves on his Asian tour. Will he take her with him? You have 1 location to check in Kyoto, Akemi's high school, and that's it. Will she go back to school there? You have 4 days before your flight back to New York. Will you return empty-handed? All 5 of my minds began to merge and shook off my doubts that were occurring in my 4th mind about Chiasa. Yes, her father was high up in the American military, and if I f***ed up, there would be great consequences for me. Naoko Nakamura hated Americans, so Chiesa's father and Akemi's father would be natural enemies. Besides, I wouldn't let Chiasa get hurt. I'd just buy her translation and tour guide services, same as I had been doing here in Tokyo. If not Chiasa, then who? I would have to find help down in Kyoto. So why not the girl I already got to know? So what was it? What was holding me back? I questioned myself, then myself fought myself. In order to be completely honest with myself, I focused in only that one question. What is the holdup with you concerning Chiasa? The answer came bursting from my brain. It was something that I had known from the moment I saw her. This girl Chiasa is a pretty, badass, beautiful girl ninja. More than I could have ever cooked up in my imagination. I met her 3 days ago, and the energy is moving too fast. If I could control the energy, at least on my part, we could work together. If not, we couldn't. Under these circumstances, I couldn't allow anyone to distract me from my mission. And my wife is the only one I love, so why spark something else up while I'm trying to get my love back and settled and secured? My mind was putting it together swiftly. Now that I had moved beyond the emotion and the thing that was holding me back, I could shoot straight to the strategy that I was trying to organize in my mind over dinner. 1. I would have Chiasa read Akemi's diary and translate only the names, addresses, and information I needed for the search. We could look up the places beforehand on the map. Maybe there were even some phone numbers in her diary. I could have Chiasa make calls for me while I was in Kyoto, and I could have her sit by the phone and wait for me to call in and give her instructions on what I needed or wanted to ask. That was it. That could work. I was certain now. I did a 180 and headed back to Chiasa's. Before reaching her house, I jumped in the phone booth and called her. There was no answer. It was 10 p.m. Could she have fallen asleep that quick, or did she go out into the night? Was she out riding her motorcycle and erasing me from her thoughts and feelings? When I opened the door to my room in Harajuku, Chiasa was there, her eyes filled with emotions.
I had an idea,
she said. I interrupted her. I have a couple of things for you to do for me. You're paid until Friday anyway, right?
Right,
she agreed. I'm trusting you, I told her. I walked to my duffel and pulled out the diary. Read this for me. Write down any names of friends or family addresses and telephone numbers you find in here and give them to me. Come back in the morning and translate for me. I have to activate my rail pass for the bullet train. Afterward, I need you to stay by the phone at your room. It's like headquarters. I'll let you know who I'll need you to call and what I need you to say and do, okay? I asked. She smiled.
Akemi's diary, right?
Hi, I told her. She laughed some at my random and limited use of the Japanese language. She sat on my bed and hiked up her legs and laid the diary on top of her knees and began reading. I had meant for her to take it home with her, but she looked like she thought she was home already. I'll be back, I told her and left. For an hour, I spoke to Uma until my phone card burnt out. Naja was excited.
Did you see Akemi?
She had asked me. Of course, I told her confidently.
Was she trying to speak English?
Naja asked coyly. She was speaking English the same as Uma, I answered, and me and Naja had a good laugh because we know that is not at all.
Is she coming back with you?
Naja asked. Of course, I told her, truly believing so.
How was she acting? Was she acting right, or was she acting funny?
Naja asked, curious as usual. Akemi is sweet. She is my wife. Of course she was acting right, I told her. After the call, I walked over to the Harajuku dollar store and picked up a new notebook for Chiasa to place the info in. I was hoping that there was some real info in Akemi's diary to help me locate Akemi swiftly. I was blocking my mind from showing me the images of Akemi's tears, the ones I knew she would have after Iowa or the girl in the pink pumps, probably the same person, gave her a twisted, lying message about something that I never said or did. I knew the sadness that would engulf her at the thoughts that I might not show up in Kyoto. At the same time, I knew that my wife was smart. Purposely, she had placed a yellow bulb in the lamp and left it on overnight at her Roppongi house probably every night. She knew that if I saw that light, I would know that yes, Akemi is near. After all, this was the color of the bulb in the basement at Cho's, where she and I, two virgins, made love. She had left me the right clues once before, and I trusted she would leave a trail once again. I resisted imagining the real-life scenes where her father was forcing her to move from place to stay away from me. I would be smart also to have faith that Akemi was my fate, and I was hers. When I opened the door to my room, Chiesa's big eyes were tear-filled. When she saw me, her tears spilled. I didn't know what happened. What happened? I asked her.
You're married?
She asked. Yes, I responded. Why are you crying?
What an incredible story,
She said softly, wiping her tears. Any names, addresses, phone numbers? Write them down in here, I told her, tossing a notebook, which landed on the bed right at her feet. She clutched the diary and held it against her breasts as though it were her private truth.
That notebook isn't good enough for this story. I'll meet you back here in the morning.
Chiasa said. What time? I asked her.
I'll be here before sunrise so we can eat and drink together,
She said softly. Why are you fasting, Chiasa? I asked her seriously.
because it feels like the right thing to do. Because I think you are so cool walking around in Japan doing something that no one else seems to be doing. Not eating or drinking in the Tokyo hot sun. That's amazing to me. That's how I am, and I want to become, unlike anybody else, completely different.
Oddly, she left out in a hurry. There are over 3 billion Muslims in the world, I thought to myself, and each of them is required to fast for Ramadan, unless they are sickly or traveling. I am not the only one. Thankfully. Chapter 8. The Shinkansen train I was booked on departed at 8 a.m. With the help of Chiasa translating, I handed them my rail pass and was issued an activated ticket that was good for me to travel round trip from Tokyo to Kyoto for an entire week. Chiasa and I parted at the point where all passengers are required to insert a small rectangular ticket into a slot that then opened the turnstile for each paying customer to enter. When I looked back to where she was standing, she was waving non-stop, something I noticed Japanese girls tend to do. First the bowing, then the waving, until they couldn't see you and you could no longer see them. She had held onto Akemi's diary and handed me a note with a few names, places, and addresses translated into English. She also handed me a new stack of index cards to study with phrases she thought would be more helpful for me to know. Some of them were words she thought I should learn and listen for, like, "Don't move, you're under arrest." Her study cards were much better than mine. She included on each of them the Japanese word written first in kanji and in romanji, and on the back she printed the English translation for me. My cards were white, hers were green. She put them in order of the topics, and even included the Japanese translation for "I am fasting for Ramadan until sunset. No food or water, please." I cracked up when I shuffled down to the last few cards and seen that she had written and translated out all of their Japanese curse words. It felt good knowing that she would be here in Tokyo on point for me. And although her company for the past few days was good for me, I felt like my regular self, moving around alone once again. The comfort, cleanliness, speed, organization, and beauty of the bullet train was something I had grown to expect in Japan. This seemed to be their way of life and atmosphere. I thought to myself that perhaps I was being spoiled here. When I returned to New York, it would be more no good than it had ever been. Hot, dirty, disorganized, disrespectful, and cold at the same time. White gloves over feminine fingers interrupted my thoughts. Well-dressed, humble, and subdued, the train attendant offered me softly,
Coffee? Green tea? Chocolates? Almonds? Water?
"No thank you," I said. The doe I attended pushed away with her tray full of temptations. It was remarkable to watch the Tokyo urban turn to rural. With several shades of green grass of varying heights and incredible trees framing farms and rice fields, my eyes were in constant motion, measuring and memorizing sights, sliding up and down hills and climbing mountains. I was exploring an Asian empire, but more than that, thinking about how versatile and all-powerful Allah is to have created such unique things. Nature, people, culture, languages, and scattered them all over the world. Pulling out my paperback book on Naoko Nakamura, I will use my time to continue reading up on him. I was convinced that he remained in Roppongi, moving back and forth to and from Ginza in preparation for his Asian tour. The girl with the pink pumps said that he took Akemi in an early morning surprise, quote-unquote. Still, Chiasa had filmed him in Shibuya at 2 p.m. My wife is in Kyoto. I thought to myself, without her father's direct supervision or control. So how did he intend to keep her still and separated from me without her cooperation? As I opened up to the table of contents, my eyes moved across each offering of the detailed information about Nakamura. There were chapters on his early childhood, military training, and education. Under the topic of education, there were separate chapters on his high school and his training at the University of Tokyo. In the university, he must have been involved in everything, because there were separate chapters on his participation in the University of Tokyo debate team, as well as the movement to discontinue English as a core requirement, quote-unquote. He had also created some organization called Defenders of Japan and wrestled on the U of Tokyo wrestling team. I moved beyond all these because I was not interested in politics and couldn't see how learning about his politics could help the matter that I was involved in. As far as him being a wrestler, no problem. It was not worth considering to me. Fortunately, after those chapters and the listings of chapters concerning Nakamura's Yakuza connection, businesses, travels, and influential friends, there was an entire section on his private life. I flipped to page 306 and began reading there. The chapter was called Mysterious Marriage. This mattered to me because Naoko's wife was Akemi's mother, and Akemi was very connected to her and to her memory of her. I was intrigued by the opening lines of the chapter. Naoko Nakamura chose his wife without ever meeting her in person, nor did he do any of the traditional Japanese pre-wedding procedures. Perhaps because his biological father was deceased and he had become estranged from his own mother, he didn't see a need to do so. However, upon further investigation, the marriage of Naoko Nakamura became more and more murky. None of Nakamura's closest relatives, friends, or allies participated in any part of the Nakamura marital ceremony. There were no wedding invitations, nor was any party given an opportunity to offer congratulations or gifts of good fortune, because Naoko Nakamura by this time had become a prominent businessman and political force, as well as a high-profile agitator in Japan. This clandestine wedding was viewed with great suspicion. One source, who asked to remain anonymous, said about Naoko Nakamura's new bride, Shiori Nakamura, appeared out of nowhere like a sudden breeze.
Folding back on the top of the page, I closed the book for a minute. That one paragraph got my mind racing. I knew that Akemi's cousin from New Jersey had once said to me that Akemi's mother was Korean, not Japanese. I knew that the name of Akemi's mother was printed in the program that I had gotten from Akemi's art show in Manhattan at the Museum of Modern Art. It was the same program that said that Akemi was a student at Kyoto Girls High. I'm good at remembering both names and faces. I was sure that her mother's name began with the letter J and was simple like Ju. I snatched my JanSport, unzipped it, rifled through my papers, and pulled out the program. Ju Yun Lee. That was the name. And the program also said that Ju Young Lee was a celebrated North Korean author. So who was Shiori Nakamura? Was she a first wife? Were there some other brothers and sisters that Akemi had that I didn't know about, and that she didn't mention, and that no one in her family had mentioned? Not knowing the Japanese culture and beliefs, I was at a loss for answers about my wife's family. So I picked up the book and read on. Shiori Nakamura appeared out of nowhere like a sudden breeze. As an investigative author, I was certain that each human life has to define history. I was determined to uncover the truth about the cold and calculating nemesis of America and American expansion. After several attempts to interview Naoko Nakamura's relatives failed, I attempted to interview his closest friends, acquaintances, and business associates. When these avenues were also closed, with each of them refusing to meet to discuss in person or over the phone any aspect of Naoko Nakamura's life, I turned to pursuing the truth by way of interviewing Naoko Nakamura's enemies and disgruntled underlings. The following chapter represents the documented conclusions of 7 years of tireless research and travel. Naoko Nakamura, a die-hard nationalist whose life efforts were toward building a self-sufficient, financially and politically independent Japan, free from American occupation and American military air bases and control, as well as a Japan with its own sovereignty, protected by its own well-trained and military-equipped army, was having difficulty convincing top Japanese business elites of his credibility and furthermore bankability. Existing major Japanese corporations and their CEOs and executives were already in both formal and informal financial working relationships and alliances with American corporations. Even some of the most conservative Japanese corporations were in secret subcontracting and consulting relationships, quote-unquote, with American consultants, experts, managers, and companies. Japanese corporate giants and executives did not trust that Naoko's philosophy and method of independence, quote-unquote, along with the elimination of the American corporate presence and inroads into Japan's economy, would be fruitful. Nakamura therefore began covertly courting business alliances and contracts with former enemies of Japan like China and North Korea. Under his new motto and banner of Asian Solidarity, Nakamura formed the Pan-Asian Corporation, rumored as having been funded in part by monies obtained through his Yakuza connection. In the process of promoting his newly formed corporation's business, he traveled throughout the Asian continent, representing himself not as the staunch Japanese-only pro-Japanese military guy, but with a new face of the Asian-friendly business tycoon who wanted to help all Asian countries to distance themselves from dependence on and domination by America and American businesses. Naoko won big by brokering an exclusive car manufacturing deal with the government of Thailand, which gave Toyota the exclusive right to design cars for Thai citizens' purchase. The Thai government gave Toyota, through a deal brokered by Nakamura, unfair trade advantages and in turn taxed American manufactured cars at the rate of 300%. Making the American vehicles unaffordable to the people of Thailand. As the nation of Thailand moved from bicycles to motorbikes and motorcycles to tut-tuts to cars, Naoko Nakamura's Pan-Asian Corporation won big confidence in the Asian business region, big benefits, incentives, and great wealth. It was this deal that won Naoko Nakamura acceptance by influential CEOs who then began to trust Nakamura at least as a broker of lucrative deals. It was in North Korea, however, that Naoko Nakamura discovered his wife-to-be, Ju Yun Lee. I put the book down, thankful that the author was about to get to the point. I was interested in the whole business building thing though. I thought there was a real simple way for the author to break it down, if he really wanted the reader to understand it. Naoko wanted to make paper in his country and use his power to protect his nation and people and family. He wanted America to get the f*** out, so he and his crew could be the heavyweights on the block. He wanted the old boys who had been running things to team up with him and run the enemy out. That's how I understood it. I did have to, however, look up some words up in my dictionary. They were clandestine, nationalist, conservative, sovereignty, covertly, staunch, and broker. I looked them up, wrote the definitions down in my notebook, and continued reading about my wife's parents. Ju Young Lee was the daughter of a North Korean government official who controlled printing and the North Korean propaganda machine. His business was printing North Korean-approved books, manuals, and pamphlets for the North Korean educational system. However, his reputation was tarnished when his wife suddenly defected to South Korea, leaving behind two daughters, one of whom was 14-year-old Jun Yun Lee. Jun Yun was a fan of great books and authors from all around the world. She led a sheltered life in a protected environment. Her best friends were books that her father kept hidden and locked in the basement of his home as part of a private secret collection of world literature. It is believed that the influence of these books spurred Ju Yun to take the uncommon and bold step in the communist country of becoming a quote-unquote free thinker. She wrote her first book, which was more of a pamphlet at age 14. It was titled Omani, which simply means mother in the Korean language. Using her father's private printing equipment, she and her best friend printed out the pamphlets and had them secretly circulated and distributed. The well-written, scholarly 10-page anonymous letter printed in the pamphlet caught on like wildfire. Some say it was because of the political argument that Ju Young raised in her writing as she spoke to her anonymous mother about freedom, family, and national loyalty, all being the same concept. Others say the pamphlets became popular because they were forbidden fruits, quote-unquote. However, the most compelling reason for the popularity of the pamphlet among North Koreans, young and old, male and female, military and civilian, was the provocative picture of a young, perhaps 14-year-old naked Korean girl on the cover, lying on the floor in the fetal position, with her newly blossomed breasts and curves and the full flow of long, straight-back hair concealing her face. Omani was only the first of Ju-yeon's famed underground writings, all following the same format of politically charged, passionate, and scholarly arguments enclosed in a cover displaying an attractive young teen, a long-haired girl, naked and faceless, striking a highly seductive pose. A pamphlet entitled One Womb, Ju-yeon's 12th publication, is rumored to have landed in Naoko Nakamura's far-reaching hands and moved him so passionately that he had to have the then 15-year-old anonymous girl for his own. In this, her final political pamphlet, while living in North Korea, Ju-yeon wrote and argued passionately that North and South Korea are born of the same womb, sisters of the same mother. She used the metaphor of two sisters bound by blood and love and life, who got into a heated argument. One sister got married to an outsider, an American, and allowed the outsider to prevent the sisters from ever forgiving each other or making amends. The two sisters therefore became strangers to one another, forsaking their true blood relationship, and one of them bonding only with the stranger instead. Ju-yeon argued heatedly that no matter what, despite all arguments and disagreements, the depth of the sisters' relationship and sisters' destiny will forever be entangled and intertwined and inseparable because they share the same blood, the same language, and the same culture, and because they emerged from the same womb. She argued convincingly that North Korea and South Korea, on close inspection, also share the same enemy. Ju-yeon accused the American stranger of augmenting a hatred between sisters and pursuing the complete isolation and elimination of one sister, namely North Korea. It is the photo of the cover of One Womb that caused a rage, however, and led the free anonymous underground pamphlet to triple its printing. The attractive teen on the cover was photographed naked and sitting with her legs opened on the edge of a simple wooden chair. The young girl's head was down, disguising her face. In Ju-yeon's signature style, her long hair was hanging from her head and flowing down, finally intermingling and resting on her Naoko Nakamura, according to an undisclosed source, paid 1 million yen, $100,000, to a North Korean agent to identify the girl on the cover. He then paid 1 million yen to another North Korean man to capture her. 15-year-old Ju-yeon Lee arrived in Osaka, Japan, by sea on the dark waters of the dark night. No source has confirmed or documented what happened between Naoko Nakamura and Ju-yeon Lee once she arrived in Japan. However, on her 16th birthday, Naoko Nakamura married her at his Kyoto home. 16 is the legal age for females to marry in Japan. On Ju-yeon Lee's first public sitting, she was presented by Naoko Nakamura as his new wife, a 16-year-old Japanese bride whom he introduced as Shiori Nakamura. Months later, the couple announced the birth of the daughter who would be their only child, Akemi Nakamura, born at midnight at their Kyoto home on December 31st, 1970. Perhaps her entrance into the world was clouded by the Japanese New Year celebration, which is the most important holiday of their year. It marked a new beginning for the couple, as well as ushering in the financial high point of the Pan-Asian Corporation. Both of my sources of the above information were murdered in Japan on separate dates and in separate places and by different means. Both of my sources' murders remain unsolved. This information, therefore, cannot be corroborated at the time of this book's publication. However, as an author, I testify to these facts, which I obtained against a wall of cultural silence, and as an outsider, a gaijin. My written and secretly recorded interviews with both of my sources for the above information remain secured at the time of publishing. The first publishing makes those interviews a matter of record. Mind-blowing. That's how I felt about the unauthorized biography, Never Surrender. I looked up the words nemesis in my English dictionary and gaijin in my Japanese dictionary. The new words I was learning danced around in my head. Captured at 15. In 1 month of her 15th year, captured, she was still in North Korea when she published her last pamphlet at 15, the book said. It had to take some time for it to be distributed, read, and discussed, and for Nakamura to get hold of it as well. Then she was captured and brought to Japan, but not married until 16. Did he her who knew her before their wedding? Ju Young gave birth to my wife Akemi months later. How many months later? I asked myself. Murder, I thought to myself. Men will murder to protect their land, women, beliefs, and profits. However, Nakamura was not an honorable man. He wasn't driven by any true beliefs. He believed only in himself and what he wanted at the moment. He took by force what should never be taken by force. A woman's heart and a woman's body. He was so far from the truth that he would not even allow his wife to keep her name. Why? In the Sudan, a woman will always keep her name. The name of her father and the name of her father's father. We are a country of fathers. We are all traced through our fathers, and no one will think of taking that away from a woman. Even after a Sudanese woman's marriage, she is still identified through her father. I began considering, what are the consequences in a nation of fathers when a person has a father who is corrupt, without faith, or boundaries, or limits? Then my mind returned to murder. The author's two sources were both eliminated. Pushing the puzzle pieces around, I figured that these were the same two guys that Nakamura paid the money to get his hands on Ju Yun. He made agreements with them, signed them, and paid out the proper sums. Then he murked them. I was realizing this was his style. He comes in the form of business. He makes agreements as though his word is bond. Like any true man's word is bond. Then he doubles back and betrays his own word and signature and agreement the same way he did when he signed the marriage papers for Akemi and me. He gave his word, printed his word, and then doubled back and kidnapped his daughter the same way that he had kidnapped his wife. Deceitful motherfucker! I thought to myself. Then I breathed some to erase my anger. Returning to the few remaining pages of the chapter titled Mysterious Marriage, I continued to read on. Ju Young Lee's, or Shiori Nakamura's, loyalty to her husband Naoko Nakamura was solid and impeccable. During their first year of marriage and her pregnancy,
She was seen only at selected high-profile social gatherings with her husband, where she was reportedly joyful, polite, alluring, and silent aside from introductions, greetings, and small niceties. Readers and fans of her anonymous free pamphlets were not given any new writings from Ju Young until 5 years later. Her new pamphlets, published as small, thin, soft-cover books, were not anonymous and were not free. They were written, published, and advertised and sold under the name Shiori Nakamura. After a careful and thorough analysis of the writing style, the word usage and placement, the passion and the philosophy driving the work, England's famed historian Robert Barringer concluded that Shiori Nakamura's books and the underground North Korean pamphlets do indeed share the same author, with an acknowledgement of an identifiable maturing as well as philosophical and intellectual growth. Shiori Nakamura, the author, debuted as a young Japanese mother, convincing other mothers who read her letters, stories, and poems that women are the key to national security. She argued that if new mothers raised their children with an unreversed, unconventional love and emotion, a new and a more compassionate generation would emerge and seize the reins of power. A more compassionate, loving, loved child will put forth a more compassionate philosophy, politics, and policy, thus saving nations from war and death and hunger and disease and chaos. She taught that only this new philosophy would save Japanese mothers from depression. Shiori's writings elevated the abnormality, conservative, and servile posture of the traditional Japanese woman. She issued controversial writings that were broadly discussed and debated. She emphasized the more balanced, well-learned, and peaceful global community. She delivered a best-selling manual called How to Raise Strong, Feminine, Knowledgeable Daughters. When she was not writing or offering her annual reading, she was an at-home wife and mother completely dedicated to the raising of her one child, reportedly in the manner which she described in her work. Naoko Nakamura allowed her. Extremely clever, he knew well how to make maximum use out of each piece and person in his kingdom. He believed that his wife's philosophy was not in conflict with his quote-unquote Pan-Asian philosophical face, from which he benefited financially over many years. Shiori Nakamura would read her work publicly only once a year. She appeared demure and lovely, speaking well-polished and perfect Japanese. She refused all interviews, nor would she answer questions. Shiori Nakamura died tragically, young at the age of 28 from brain cancer. This author sympathetically submits that it must have been difficult and debilitating for her to live a life of secrets. Particularly a secret identity which may have complicated her health in the end. Her daughter, Akemi Nakamura, is noted throughout Japan as a young artistic genius to watch out for. Below is Ju Young Lee's last poem, which offers subtle hints of her evolution and beliefs and secrets and sorrows and joys. The young North Korean woman, having emerged from a communist country, makes overtures to God and Sufi-like implications and pays homage to life and love. The first and only slight disagreement with her husband is hinted at here in the lines she penned. Perhaps Ju Young saw her life's end approaching.
Hananim. People who love are different from everybody else. People who feel are more fortunate than all. Rich men who buy and grab up things are just moving them around. They have bought these things with money, which they can never own. A mother with life in the womb is the one who is truly wealthy. A newborn in the arms is beyond oil in one palm and pure gold in the other. Father says that there is no God, so that I might worship him. But something is moving in the atmosphere, not for viewing, but for sensing and being changed by. That I can feel. I am certain. My first love was the sky. Who created that? My second love was my mother's eyes that revealed a reflection of me. My father had a house of great beauty built for us all. But who created the mind, the memory, and the imagination? I sit in the soil surrounded with no walls just to talk to that one, even without words. Diamonds are lovely, but sound is lovelier. Roller coasters are thrilling. My zero is clothed in my is more. Why turn on the lights when we can lie under the glare of the moon? Why listen to the call for war when we can make love? He wants revolution, but I want passion revolving in my soul. A man invented the fan, but who created the wind and caressed it into a breeze, then covered it into a storm? A cloud holds the water, yet both clouds and water were created. Impress me not with castles, cars, or clothes. I'd rather meet the maker of rain, but would be content with simply being showered while lying in the grass, facing a darkened sky pregnant with thunder and leaking lightning. My husband asks me, "Do you love me?" So gently I answer him, "I love the creator of life. This is why I can love you." Yet everywhere that I can see and feel a trace of the creator, the light of life, there is so much love in it for me.
By Ju Young Lee. The poem. I read it 5 times over. When I read the last words for the 5th time, I felt a new love born within myself for my wife's mother, and even a deeper love and understanding of my wife as well. Ju Young Lee showed me the parts that make up the soul of Akemi, and the reason that Akemi was capable of such deep love for me. I could see now why and how Akemi was at ease with my faith and so captivated by my Uma, my beautiful Uma, who has a soul similar to Ju Young's resting in her bosom. True, their methods and manners are extremely different, yet their intent and their meaning was beginning to feel the same, the very same to me. I'm so happy to have shared with you another episode of this Sister Souljah miniseries on Ralph Reads. I would like, or rather love, to thank you, fellow queens and kings, for tuning in to TURN, the United Ronin Networks. If you would like to leave a small donation or connect with me via social media, please do so via www.solo.to/RGMC2407. And don't forget to tell a friend to tune in to TURN, the United Ronin Networks. We are Ronin. Fellow royalty, pick up a good book, read a good story, and set your good self free. I appreciate you, and I love you like cooked food. I will see you folks on the next edition of this Sister Souljah miniseries on Ralph Reads. Working hard as hell, as hot as hell, till I'm damn well, living well as wishes in a wishing well. I'm online for life with a story to tell, and that is real. Good night.